So the presentation is going to be refactoring the VI without breaking the China cabinet. Has anybody seen this? You see is a spaghetti and a China cabinet. So my name is Fabiola Cueva. I did put all my lab certifications there, but I need to go get recertified now. I'm the DQMH Consortium President. I'm also the Chief Architect for DQMH, and I am the co-author for the LabVIEW Graphical Programming 5th edition. If anybody happens to have it, I can sign it. I've been programming in LabVIEW since 2000. That's why you see all the gray hair. I worked for NI from 2000 to 2006. Then I founded Delacor. We did the public release of DQMH in 2015. And then there was an exit through acquihire that I can tell you more about, or you can see the presentation I did for GDevCon in Europe last year. And then the DQMH Consortium was founded because of that. So I disappeared from the LabVIEW world for about 3 years. And DQMH not only survived, it thrived. And I like to point that out because DQMH is a framework now that is not only my baby. I have proven that I can win the lottery, I can die, I can move away, and it will still be there. And you will hear me say a lot about happy wiring, but also a thing that I say a lot of my presentations is be kind to your future self. And I used to say that you needed to code, like if you were coding for a psychopath and knew where you lived. And I realized that even though that would instill some fear, it wasn't as effective as just being kind to yourself. Our Giants Are Female is a program that we started on the first GDevCon in the UK. And you can read more about it, but I wanted to make sure I found a woman in engineering science in Australia. So I found Florence Mackenzie. And my favorite thing about her is that she founded an electrical contracting business so she could self-apprentice because nobody would hire her as an apprentice. So in order to become the first female electrical engineer, she actually had to create her own business to hire herself. So for you guys, next time I'll look for someone in New Zealand. All right. Then I am happy to announce that the new release of DQMH is out. So this is the version 7.1. Normally our versions, when they end with 0.0, they're just the regular set of new features, bug fixes, etc. When there's a 0.1, that means that this one includes what the DQMH trusted advisors decided was their favorite feature. So they get one of those every year. Okay, so getting to the presentation. We're going to be understanding the VI. I want to make sure everybody's clear that I'm actually doing the air quotes. I'm not talking about the virtual instrument. I'm talking about the application that is implemented in a single VI, the VI. So we're going to talk about how you refactor that, tips for successful refactoring, tools to aid during your refactoring, designing for long-term maintainability, and some of the benefits of using a framework to actually prevent the VI in the first place. So, the VI, have you seen it? Anybody raise their hands? I know, like Chris sent me a message a couple of months ago. It's like, Fab, I found it in the wild. It is real, the VI exists, right? Okay, now the question is, have you created the VI? Has anybody, of course nobody's, I have created the VI. When the first time I used LabVIEW, I did a huge application, right? It was huge. It grew as a little snake and it turned out in a big monster that ate the whole computer. This was when I was still working at NI. I left and I started studying my master's, and one of my professors asked me to do an application. And this is not exactly the application because the application has died, but that navigation window, right? That's what you get when you do Control-Shift-N. I see some people smiling. This is actually a small application because the window is just the size of that purple area. But you can see the color coding. I was laughing when Eli showed his color-coded block diagram because I have seen those in the wild. I am pretty certain that the China cabinet that I'm going to be talking about was one of those applications that proved that there was a limit to the size of the block diagram. So yeah, that's the VI. So now this is the story time with Anti-Fab. and we're going to be talking about my particular experience with the VI. There's two that I guess marked my life as a consultant. The first one was the first time that I went to visit a customer, and that time I arrived at lunchtime. So I didn't get to see any of the code. And we are sitting there, my customer's talking to me, somebody shows up and he's like, this is Fab, he's here to work on the VI. And here I am thinking, a little cute VI probably does analyze, acquire, analyze, present. No, it was Godzilla. It was huge. It had references everywhere. You had to scroll like 50 pages in one direction, 50 in the other. It had tab controls on the front panel. It was just, thing of nightmares. But my favorite of the VI applications is one that I have always lovingly called the China cabinet. Even my customer knew that I called it the China cabinet. And the reason I call it a China cabinet is every time I went into that code, if I moved a wire, things would behave differently. It had been patched and duct taped from different versions of LabVIEW. I used to also call it the archaeology expedition. You could go into one area of the code and realize, oh, here's where he learned about property nodes. Over here, you can see where he learned about reference management. And over here, he learned that you could actually register references to events. And it was just like that. And you would find every now and then a sub-BI here and there that would have a functional global variable or a state machine. So you could see that there were efforts to make this better, but they were all tangled, right? So the background on these, it was a commercial application, and it was used by non-technical users. It was hardware involved, but the end customer were mostly non-technical people. The application it's actually really weird to see these in LabVIEW, but it was a commercial application, with support call people that you would call if you had problems with your application. It was profitable. It worked, right? This is the first thing when you have something that is the VI. And I do say for the most part, because my customers still would pay me to run desktop execution trace toolkit traces when something was not working, because the only way I could figure out, where something broke was by doing that. Because he had an array of events, an array of references, a cluster with all the references to the main BI. This cluster was sent everywhere on that thing, and anywhere on your block diagram, you could have a value signaling happen at any time. So good luck, troubleshooting that. So it worked. I mean, the people that were buying this application, they could use it. It was urgent to fix because there was an upgrade on LabVIEW and an upgrade on Windows. And one of the components of this application was Windows Media Player. And that caused that upgrade in Windows caused that the Windows Media Player would minimize every time a set of the video would turn. So I had to figure out how to fix it. And they could not afford to start from scratch, right? So that's kind of like the picture of the China cabinet. So let's talk about some tools and tips when refactoring the VI. Well, the first thing I learned is if you break it, you own it. My first mistake was trying to change, and this is something that Eli told me right as he saw the title of my presentation. He's like, oh, you always think it's a small change, and then things unravel. So then my first thing that I learned is anytime I would go in, it didn't matter how small the change I would make. Any bug after that, my customer would blame on me, right? And it was always like that. Oh, it worked before you touched it. And I was like, yeah, you have some race conditions there. I'm pretty certain that that has nothing to do with what I did. So I had to realize that there had to be a way where I would, before finding the hidden code, that I could provide a way to test things separate from my customer's code. So it's a lot of the things that I'm going to be mentioning now are going to sound like I'm selling DQMH to you because they're now part of DQMH, but this China cabinet application predates DQMH, but it's where I learned a lot of the things that are now part of DQMH. All right, so we're going to start with some tips. Tip number 1, find hidden code. I would run VI Analyzer on this application, and it would highlight ghosts of sub BIs. And I didn't know what that meant, right? Because I would go like double click and I would see an outline thing. Well, I discovered that there's this thing called autogrow. You might not even know that that exists, but if you uncheck it, you can actually hide things behind the wall of your trace structure. Ta-da! And it's gone. So if you double click on the, or try to find the terminal, that's how you're going to see where that guy is. So if I got to go find terminal and you see that outlined. So BI Analyzer, when BI Analyzer was showing me these unused code or things that needed my attention, they were hidden behind the case structure. Took me months to figure out what those ghost things were. So if you are faced with your first China cabinet, do not do Control U. You're going to have a heart attack if you do that, so don't try to clean the whole thing. But you can go and check if any of your structures have the autogrow set. Okay, beware of code obfuscated on purpose. Part of the reason this code was like that was because my customer believed that obfuscating the code was a way to protect his IP. I showed him later that there are better ways of doing it. But, you know, we had the history of dealing with that. So why do I have a kid there throwing a tantrum? That would also be called a brat, right? I don't know if that word works in Australian English. Yeah, okay. So there's a thing called a brat BI. Who here has used brat BIs? Okay, the US people. Okay, all right. So a brat BI is also, another name is a drop-in BI. It's a BI that you drop on the block diagram and it tells the parent what to do and the parent does it. Okay, so there are different uses for these brat BIs. The one thing that happened on this China cabinet, we had a brat BI with a transparent icon. Okay, so you can actually, in this one, what it does, if you see when I run it, it moves all to the origin. So you can go and edit an icon and do this, right? We're now going to erase all the text. And it's like, this is how a nightmare is born. So you're seeing there, I'm going to delete all the different things on the icon. So anything that would make it show up in the block diagram, Eli is having a heart attack there. There's no icon, right? It's gone. So it disappears from the block diagram, but when I run the VI, you're going to see that the origin of the front panel goes to the origin. So the thing is still there. Well, this is my tip. There's a thing called browse relationships, and you can see all the sub VIs. There's a lot of people that don't know about this menu. You normally don't need to get to it, but if you're having trouble trying to figure out what your block diagram is doing, you could do it that way. Another thing is not to worry if you have VI Analyzer. I believe that one of the tests that comes with VI Analyzer would find this, and that will be the icon size and border test. Will tell you about it. But you need to run VI Analyzer to begin with. So please, no pranks allowed. I don't want anyone sending me an email saying, hey, Fab, thank you so much for showing about the transparent VIs and the autogrow feature, because now my coworker did that to me. Okay? No pranks allowed. This is, use power for good, not for bad. All right. Tip 2, I always say that the first key to dealing with refactoring the VI is finding the meatballs from the spaghetti code. So you need to isolate them. How is it that I isolate that first feature for that China cabinet? Well, first I used the wrong language, and I told my customer that I needed to do a functional global variable wrapped in an API. He yelled at me. He knew enough to know that FGBs were the devil. They're not, but that's a different discussion. And then I realized that I needed to know a little bit better about what was the correct terminology or the industry accepted terminology. What I wanted to do was an action engine. It's the same thing as a functional global variable in terms of having a case structure and a while loop. The difference is if you use the term functional global variable, the person that is listening to you is expecting to see a read and a write. An action engine involves or it tells to the other person you're talking to that you know that you're getting the data from the chief register, doing something to it inside the VI, and then putting it back to the chief register. That is protecting your data. The other is not. All right, so once we got out of the terminology, I was able to create these tester. The other name for that is action engines or LabVIEW components. If anybody here knows Professor Steve Watts from the UK, he wrote the book Software Engineering Approach to LabVIEW, and that's pretty much how he did his approach to object-oriented programming. He called it component-oriented design. And that's what I was suggesting here, is I want to create these new features. So I isolate the feature. First API and tester were a wrapper to an action engine, like I said, or component-oriented design. So when refactoring the code, when my customer would complain that something broke or was not working, I could isolate it, run the API tester, and show him that it worked. Or better yet, I could use my API tester as a sniffer and actually see how the application was working. And I could tell him, well, the reason this is not working is because you did A, B, and C before calling my function, or you're missing doing this function, right? So when refactoring code, create API for new features, create tester for new features. Don't go and do code and fix directly on the China cabinet. You're just gonna do things worse for you. All right, tip 3 is just gonna trace your steps. Your source code control for retracing steps during refactoring. Now, if you have been to any of my presentations or you've seen any of the videos about my presentation, it's kind of weird that I left source code control so late in my presentation, but you want to make sure you're not only using source code control, but you're committing often and you're writing really good notes. It is tempting to think that the previous version or the very last change you did is what broke the code. Sometimes you have to retrace your steps a little bit further than that. So analyze the changes, look at all the files that change, and the last change may not be the cause for the issue. Also, breakage can occur in unrelated areas. So sometimes the actual bug was introduced for a change that it didn't even touch the VI that is giving you trouble, right? But it's important to have it. Okay, tip number 4, do not go into code and fix mode. So code and fix mode is, oh, I know I got it. I'm 5 minutes from fixing it. You just move this wire and we're done, right? How many times you guys have said that, right? Oh, come on, nobody here. There's just only one hand. All right. So instead, and there's going to be a unit test presentation at the end, so I'm not going to steal your thunder, but one of the things that I suggest is create a unit test before you fix the code. If unit testing is something that you always wanted to try, but you've never had the time, this is the time. I know it sounds crazy, you have a bug to fix, why the hell would I take the time to do a unit test now? But this is the best time. So you are going to create a unit test before fixing the code. Of course, that is going to fail because your code is not fixed yet. Then you're going to fix the code, and you are going to verify that your hypothesis was correct because your unit test is now going to pass. The best thing now is now you have a documentation. Running code never lies. It's better than just writing the document and saying, oh, I solved this bug this way. No, you show there with running code how this code is supposed to work. That means that later on when you make the same mistake again and you run the unit test, it will let you know, hey, dummy, you did the same mistake again. So this is another way of being nice to future you. All right, tip 5, slow down to go fast. When I teach, when I coach, when I work with new people and I mentor new people, they always tell me, you're slowing me down. What do you mean I have to write a unit test before solving the bug? Why do you mean I have to have API testers? Oh, the API tester, that's just a suggestion, right, Isuru? I don't need to maintain it. But the reason is all of these things, the API testers, the unit tests, the proper APIs, the documenting as you go, is because if you say I will do it later, that later never comes. And when it's 3 in the morning and you're tired and you're trying to make things work, that's when you need all those things. That your brain is not going to be able to do all those things at that time. So you build these tools as you go. So it seems like it's slowing you down, but it's going to make you go faster at solving bugs and maintaining your code later on. All right, tip 6. This is where you bring the big guns, right? Designed with code with debugging and testing in mind. When I was saying earlier that one of the issues that I had with this customer was that I had to run desktop execution trace toolkit. I've had other customers where I had to use 3 computers. All right, first computer would be running LabVIEW, and there's a little menu that allows you to operate remotely an executable or debug DLL, right? So I would run that. You have to build in the second computer, you build the LabVIEW executable with debugging enable. That allows you to have all your block diagrams in the executable. And your third computer is running desktop execution trace toolkit. All right, this is the thing you run and you impress your friends. You can tell that I don't have that fun friends. You're at a bar and at NI Connect, and then you're telling them, let me tell you about the time that I ran 3 computers, right? It is useful. It did help me to solve very hard to find things, but the reality is not because you can means you have to do it. I've only done this twice, in 2 separate occasions. I call this extreme debugging. And it's not because you can, you should. There are other presentations that I recommend. Norm has one on design for debugging, and Steve and Jörg did another one on debug-driven design. The main thing is your goal is to never have to use one of these, right? If in an application that you design. It's okay if somebody calls you for a rescue job and you have to do it. But if you're doing things good, you shouldn't have to be worrying about, should I do it? Okay? All right, tip number 7. Be realistic, be patient. It took years to create the VI. Refactoring is going to take time. It takes years to create unruly code. It's going to take years to untie it, right? You cannot just go and clean the whole thing. The China cabinet took us about, I would say, about 5-6 years to clean up. Now, the nice thing was I was able to show my customer by doing the isolating of the features and peppering with APIs, which, by the way, also involves some archaeology, because the first API testers that I gave him were action engines. The second one had a JKI state machine. The third one was the QMessage, the QMH. And then the fourth one was really starting with DQMH. And once we got to DQMH, he was the one that said, you need to make this public. This is going to help a lot of people. And once we were able to have most of the meatballs be DQMH peppered throughout, that's when he said, okay, I'm ready for you to refactor this and start from scratch. Because we already had all the components. Now we could fix all the race condition and other things that we needed to do. Understanding existing code. Some sections are hard to understand. Sometimes you have to just put a black box and just trust the process. Right, so I would black box those sections and put unit tests to it. And then some sections just will have to stay as is. Because whatever, strike of genius this person had, we just kind of figure out how they did it. So my suggestion here is have a counter for refactoring attempts. That looks like that. You're not the first one to try to refactor this code. If you succeed, congratulations, delete this label. If you don't, increment the counter below, and please make sure the unit tests include whatever drove you to try again. 42 times, okay? So these are kind of those messages that you leave for future you. Okay, so finally, prevent creating the VI. Choose an existing framework or template that provides debugging tools, that includes testing methods for new code, that offers documentation tools, and avoid quick and dirty solutions. Quick solutions may lead to the VI. I know sometimes it's very tempting to say, but I just need to do X, right? And then it starts growing. So I suggest that you go for fast and clean methods. A DQMH module, for example, may seem overkill, but it already has an API tester, and if somebody wants and adds a new things, I already started it with the good way, right? So are all the VI bad? Should we trash them all? Not necessarily. Some of them end up being treasures. An application can be profitable and be implemented as a VI. That was a very tough lesson for me to learn. It can be extremely hard to maintain and upgrade. I have a customer that they make a lot of money with their application, and every now and then when they have an emergency on a bug, I have their full attention while that bug is being troubleshooted and solved. That's when I sneak in some fixes and things that I know I can get away with. But as soon as that bug is fixed, I don't see him again for 3 years until there's another emergency that they need. So the key is deciding when it is worth it to refactor. Now, of course, I mean, I said I was not going to sell you DQMH, but I still have to. I mean, I'm the DQMH consortium president. So I'm just going to say why DQMH. And by the way, I'm the first one to say, just use the framework. It doesn't have to be DQMH. Just use something that is proven and tested. If Jörg was here, he would tell you, no, you have to use DQMH, right? Because Jörg Campbell he found his hammer and he wants everything to be a nail. So why DQMH? There's guidance and testing, there's automation and standardization. All generated code is open. All the code that is generated for you is completely open. There's no password protection. The scripting tools are password protected, but the generated code is completely yours. The API tester can be used in development mode and in executable mode. It's backed by the DQMH consortium. I think, like I said, that's important. I can go away and now we know they will survive. There are other tools like Lumos, DCFG, which is a configuration editor, a test sequencer. There's the whole ecosystem of the trusted advisors and the enthusiasts. There's some applications like Antidoc. Antidoc can generate documentation. So now if I get called to support an existing DQMH project, I just run Antidoc and then I can see everything I need from there. There are other tools like Panther Dashboard. Neosoft has the test standifier that allows you to modify an existing DQMH module and use it in test stand. There's community support. There's an active community. I put the picture there of Beth and I because at NI Connect, it was funny. It was like, I felt like I was coming out of a time machine because I had, my last NI week was 2019 and this was my first NI Connect. So I had totally been disconnected. And then I come in and on the first day of the NI Connect, they were showing my book, right? And then on the second day, Beth was talking about how DQMH has helped her standardize on testing. And she also uses my book, by the way. Every new employee that works with her gets a copy of the book, earmarked with all the things that they need to read. And there are NI framework badges. There's 2 framework badges. One is for Actor Framework and the other one is for DQMH. All right, so the takeaways. Find hidden code. Look for that autogrow, use VI Analyzer, browse for relationships, right? When you're trying to figure out what may be hiding behind the corners. Isolate your feature. Again, if you're using DQMH, you can do it that way. But if not, still think about what is the way I'm going to be interacting with this feature and create a tester for it and save it with your project and so you can be able to come back and see how it works. Trace your steps, use source code control, commit early, often, and with meaningful comments. Again, you don't realize this is going to save you until it saves you. And by then it's too late to go back and write the comments. So just write them as you go. Do not go into code and fix mode, create unit tests. Slow down to go fast. Design code with debugging and testing in mind. Be realistic. It took a long time to tangle it. It may take a long time to untangle it. And prevent creating the VI by using a framework. So thank you. And remember, be kind to your future self and happy wiring. So you said I needed to leave 10, 15 minutes for Q&A, right? So, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Fab. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please wait for a microphone to come to you so we can capture it for the guys online. We'll start off with Chris.
Thank you, Fab. Really good presentation. I just wanted to, you've mentioned the VI Analyzer, and I'm not sure how many people use it, but we've started using it a lot at our organization, and I just wanted to share an experience. So I was analyzing some code that we'd written a few years ago, and we had to dust it off and get it back up and running, and I ran the VI Analyzer, and it took a long time to go through the whole project, but you know, I looked through some of the high priority issues and it found a cluster where it had, there was a whole lot of wires going to this cluster and the cluster was using the same parameter in the cluster twice. And it was for a control system. Yeah. So I had the feedback control value and the actual sensor value going into the same cluster. Thing. Yeah. And I thought, oh wow, like there was such a little thing, and I found that I thought, geez, that would have taken me hours to debug. So yeah, big fan of the VI analyzer after that little experience. So yeah, definitely worth trying the VI analyzer if you have not. Yeah, that's my not really a question, but anyway.
Ready? Oh. How did it turn off? Okay, there we go. Do you do
Continuous integration and development?
well, yeah, I mean, the burden of
Deployment?
VI is like some VI analyzer or whatever. You have to,
Yes,
you have to manually
so-
do it. Like, do you automate it?
Yes, the actually DQMH, the validation tool that comes with DQMH has a CLI component. So you can either run it live where you get all the feedback, or you can run it silent and you can run it to continuous integration. So DQMH itself comes with a tool that allows you to run that. BI Analyzer, the consortium has a free style guideline that you can find online. I can share the link for you guys. And the consortium sells a set of custom tests that are made on BI Analyzer that you can run. So yes, we're complete big fans of continuous integration and running unit tests. That's another reason that I do unit tests, is so you can run them automatically.
Do you containerize it?
Not now, because you haven't done it yet. But that's why we want the containers. Yes.
And
So right now we're running on an Amazon instance or Matthias's server in his house, and then we just connect remotely.
you just have a VM somewhere that you spin.
Yeah, and then we just spin it. The one thing I do tell everyone, even if you're not ready to do continuous integration, even if you don't have containers, even if you don't know what we're talking about, please do not build on the same computer that you develop. If you don't take anything else from this, just build in a different computer. That's just going to tell you so much about what you're forgetting. But yeah. So
Selfishly, I'm curious. Our first Docker container is coming out in July. It'll be on Linux.
yeah, it's not going to work for.
No.
No, because we need to build the packages for Windows, right?
But you could still use it to run VI Analyzer. I guess.
Well, yeah, you could run VI. I guess you could use the container to run the unit test and the VI analyzer. Yeah. It could be.
Mildly useful. Okay.
Yeah.
First step.
Any other questions in the room? Yeah.
That transparent icon feature can be very useful if you're trying to hide the timer, so the application stops if the customer doesn't pay you.
That's a good useful one. There's another tool. What's his name? Matthias Bodol. He's from Studio Bots. He's one of the members of the board of the DQMH consortium. His tool is called BLT for LabVIEW, Build License and Tracking. If you haven't tried it out, I recommend trying it. And what it does is allows you to package your executable, and whenever you do new builds, you can push the new executable to your customer. You can track. When I send them an API tester and I ask them, how's the code working? And they say, oh, great. I can go and be like, it says here that you never run it. Or it says here that you run it for 10 seconds. I don't think that's enough for you to evaluate it. And you can also do the licensing. So you can turn off the license. Now, like Luis says, that's the nuclear option. We've never really done it, because once you've done it, you're fried. But go ahead, what do you want?
It's very useful for if you have something running in a manufacturing line in China or something, and you want them to stop, and they won't because they're getting paid by the unit, and you just say, no, stop building. You turn it off, and they can't test anymore. That's the useful, good application. The other is if you pay, I kill it. But you can only do that once, right? And you'll never work with that customer again.
There's a...
That works, but that assumes that everybody's connected, right? You can't just disable a disconnected system.
So this is Luis. He's my business partner, my husband.
So you can set it up so that it will allow you to run for a certain amount of time away from the internet. So you can say, I wanted to connect once a week, once a month, once every 6 hours, so that if you don't have consistent internet connection, you can do that. If you never have internet connection, well, then
yeah, it doesn't work.
we found through the years that you have to specify in your contract that they must have an internet connection when they're running remote applications, just because you want to be able to look at the test results, you want to be able to log data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've got one from Chris.
So one thing that stands out to me is the DQMH community is very healthy and large. I'm kind of curious, how many people are actively working on development these days?
So we have, let me try, I'm trying to count, because we have obviously everyone in the board that we are now involved on developing. We have a test manager. Yeah, so Luis is counting for me here. I think we're on around 7 or 8 people doing development.
And I guess sometimes you have different ideas about which direction to take certain features, or do you get ultimate say how to think?
So this is one of the questions. So when we got acquired, the company that acquired us, I told them, you don't care about DQMH, and that was like my red line. I want to figure out what we're going to do with this. And the first thing they said is, we'll open source it. And I was like, no, you're going to kill it if we do open source. And the reason for that was because DQMH is not only a tool that helps you code a lot faster, it also has a lot of my ideas on how developing needs to be implemented. So for example, as soon as you create a new feature, you get an API tester on your face trying to encourage you to update it and figure out how you're going to test that before you do the implementation. When Mikael was helping us try to figure out if we could do the UML for the GDS toolkit, for the Open GDS toolkit, the first thing he did was like, look, I created a tool that you give me a table of events and it generates all the events and it creates all the code. And I was like, that's exactly the thing I don't want, because that means the API tester will be all broken forever. So so that type of stuff, I was very hesitant, and I had at that point I'm definitely a benevolent dictator. So yes, I do have a veto power. For the last 3 years, I wasn't that involved in the actual everyday decisions. The only feature that I'm still very proud that came in was when we did the private events and the local instances. Jörg and I did a proposal for what the architecture needed to be, and mine won. And I was like, okay, I still have it. I didn't get to implement the whole thing, but I still got the decision. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions in the room?
Yeah, hi Fab. Just wondering globally, roughly how many people are using DQMH?
So that is really hard to tell, because we don't, I mean, we know that it's one of the that has the highest downloads on BIPM, and we track the number of downloads, but it's really hard to know if that actually equates to users. But we do, I mean, we have a pretty healthy community. What is that download number? The download number right now from the top of my head, I don't, but I can put it on the Discord. Last time we said it was 30,000, was it?
So we've heard tens of thousands.
Yeah, tens of thousands will be the number. Yeah.
It's in the tens of thousands. And can I perpetuate some of the rumors we've heard about support?
If you want.
So we've heard from various NI people that it's about in the 80% of large applications that they get support requests for. It's a rumor. I've never seen numbers. I've never seen charts.
So it's not that the support question is due to DQMH. It just happens they are calling for something else.
The code they see.
Yeah. No. But it was basically, we have the anecdote that a lot of the code that they're seeing from customers are made in DQMH. And the other point of feedback that I have for that is when NXG was happening, one of the program managers from NI called me and asked me what were the features that I needed for the QMH. And I said, look, we're a mom and pop shop, small in Austin. We're not important, right? So whatever I ask for it doesn't matter. And the guy was like, Fab, we just went to Siemens, and he said several large companies. And all of them, every one of them, we asked them, when are you moving to NXG? And they said, when DQMH moves to NXG, that's when we're moving to NXG. So yeah, you may be a mom and pop shop, but a lot of our big customers are using DQMH. So all of that is anecdotal information. I really don't have strong numbers. Now, one thing I'm going to say is DQMH is free for you guys, but it's not free to make. and this last year, I realized how much our model was working, and this goes for any of the alliance partners, business managers in the room. The way we created DQMH is all our marketing budget went to maintaining DQMH, and when Delacorp existed, and Delacorp we would check every month how we were doing in hours with our different customers to make sure that we were not starving any of our customers. DQMH was treated as a customer. If we were not investing any hours on DQMH for that month, we make sure that week was invested on putting time on DQMH, and that's how we kept DQMH alive. When I gave it to the consortium, the rest of the companies that are on the board, their businesses run on DQMH. So it wasn't their best interest to keep it moving. But it's also, we started to see that we were having a lot less availability for money to pay people to implement new features, which is something that I did as Delacorp. So we had the DQMH trusted advisors since 2018, I believe. They pay a membership every year, so that keeps some of the new features going. Now we have the DQMH enthusiasts, so that's for companies that are not alliance partners or not in the service industry, but they still want to support DQMH. And that's becoming more important now because I'm realizing that I am kind of semi-retired, so I have no interest on working as hard as I used to before we got acquired. So we definitely need to find a way to keep DQMH alive. So I guess the answer to your question as to how many people are using it and how important it's to them, we're going to see as we move forward, depending on how much support we get on money-wise. So
38,858 downloads, installs from VIPM.
What was the number again? 38,000?
38,858.
So I said 30,000. I wasn't done. Oh. Any other questions? No? I hope this was useful. I know I tend to do a little bit more of philosophical, and I'm an old lady trying to tell you the story when I was young. But I just hope that some of those things help you. It may not be the ultimate practical tip, but just take away some of these things that what leaves a memory behind and what makes a difference is not being done and finishing your feature the faster than anyone else, is the service and the attention that you give to the people that you're making applications for. So if they get to smile when they use it, right? Or you have that deadline where you're not pulling your hair and your coworker's hair because you cannot get finished, that has a lot of value. So again, be kind to your future selves and happy wiring.